in the conflict, there is the message. No matter what bad happens, somehow, some way, God is still able to bring good out of that. Hi everyone, Angelo here. I'm a creative and theologian, and it's the third Sunday in Lent. So we're in chapter 13 of Luke, and this story starts off by saying how some people arrived and they told Jesus about these Galileans who apparently Pilate would have murdered, and he mixed their blood with the blood of the sacrifices. And Jesus says to the people, okay, so you think because they suffered in this way, you think because they died in this way, that they were greater sinners than anybody else? Or what about the 18 people over at Siloam? You think when the tower fell on them is because they were greater sinners? And he's saying, no, it's not that, But either which way, conversion is what it's about. And then he goes on to tell a parable, and he says how there was a man with a fig tree in the yard, but the fig tree, like, it wasn't producing any fruit at all. So you're looking to cut it down, and presumably the gardener or the caretaker would be like, you know what, let me just try with it for one more year. And the man is like, it's 3 years and it's no fruits. And the gardener is like, give me one more time. Give me one more year, sorry. Let me dig up around it. Let me put manure, take care of it, and see what happens. And then if after that it don't work, then fine. So this story comes like, it's split into two parts, where it's like the first part is the news and then the second part is a parable. And the first part reminds me of the famous quote from Karl Barth, where he's like, how to do theology, you have to do it with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other. And I think it goes to show that the same way we are now in the 21st century, or at least here in Trinidad and Tobago, when we have a way that one of the first topics of conversation would be shocking news. So it's like the same way for us, how it is for us in our culture. It seems like it's similar or the same for Jesus in his culture back then too. That shocking news is probably one of the first topics of conversation. But it does make me wonder, so we have that similarity, and I also wonder if we have the other similarity where the same way for us, we have shocking news, but we're also so desensitized to the shocking news at this point that we'll talk about it today, and it's like tomorrow we forget about it. It makes me wonder if they were the same way too. Although, at least because of Jesus, I kind of lean in more toward no, because he was able to bring back this other reference and be like, so what about these people, right? Because the people who came to Jesus had one story, and he's like, he speaks to that as well as to another issue. But he didn't miss a beat in this situation. Ever the teacher. He used everything as a teaching moment. He took something that was bad and he was able to draw out something good from it, which is very characteristic of God, right? That no matter what evil happens, no matter what bad happens, somehow, some way, God is still able to bring good out of that. And I don't think it's that God causes the bad in order for the good to happen, but I think God is such a God of justice and redemption and goodness that no matter what bad or evil happens, the power of God is still able to bring out something good out of that. So it's like Jesus took this situation where he used the moment to defend the dead, yes, as well as to talk about something that is central to his preaching message, which is, of course, conversion, or the Greek might be, well, metanoia, metania, however you choose to say it, right? But this idea of turning your heart back to God, turning back to God with our whole selves. And the thing is, he had to defend the victims because, I mean, I guess similar to how it is now as well, people have a way of thinking that you get what you deserve. So the public narrative might have been something along the lines of these people from Galilee were so bad or terrible, or whatever the case might be. The same way maybe the narrative was that about the people of Siloam as well. So it's probably like, okay, well, this is tragic what happened, but their fate also isn't surprising. That's probably what the public narrative was, right? But when we take it in, right? I mean, besides the tower falling, when we take it in, for Pontius Pilate to do something like murder people, take their blood and mix it with that of the sacrifices, that's take real effort. Like, that would take real work. So, at least for me, when I read that, that's an intentional display of power or abuse of power, as the case might be, and a direct provocation. And he's doing it simply because he could have. And who knows what message he would have trying to send, he would have been trying to send with that action. But the message he definitely sent was a disregard for the people and more so a disregard for God. So as much as within our Catholic tradition, and I suppose it stretches over into the wider Christian tradition as well, as much as, at least at this point, it seems like we try to portray Pilate as being sympathetic to Christ at the Passion, history shows us otherwise. Because let's remember, at the end of the day, it would have been Pilate who signed off on Christ's crucifixion. I think in general, the type of thinking that believes that people get what they deserve, it comes from a severe distrust of life in general and a severe distrust of one another. And I'm not saying that actions don't have consequences, because obviously they do. But the reality is, bad things happen to good people all the time. And the reality of that is we can't explain it. And it's especially difficult to explain in light of the belief that we hold and maintain that God is a God of love. Because of course, the first question anytime something tragic happens, naturally, is how could a loving God allow this? And I think it's definitely a valid question. And I think it's because of questions like this that surface level theology and religion doesn't work. Because to try to answer complex questions with simplistic answers, the two don't equate. It must end in inadequacy. And if something that is supposed to fulfill us, meaning religion and more so God, because yes, of course, the truth of the matter is God fulfills all. But when we have a misunderstanding of that, so when we try to take it at a surface level and not engage in a deeper way, something that is supposedly supposed to fulfill us, it leaves us feeling inadequate. So the question is, why would we stick around? And I think that's why it's so important to get into the details of the Gospels. Because I feel like it's in the details of the Gospels, and I mean in Scripture in general, right? But it's in the details that we begin to discover new beginnings, as well as we begin to deepen our understanding of who God is, and I suppose I could say it like the way life works. Chaotic and everything else as it is. Now, this detail of the fig tree, it had me super stuck all week. Like, I was racking my brain trying to figure out, what might this be saying? What is God saying with this? Because the thing is, for Christians, the fig tree is a conflicting symbol. Because it's more than one time there's a fig tree mentioned in the gospel, right? And because I think we could all remember the time when Jesus was hungry and he went to the fig tree and it was empty, so he cursed the fig tree, which I suppose in a way is a natural reaction. But yet, when it comes to this fig tree, there's a message of hope in this. So in racking my brain this week, it came to me like, you know what? Stop with that and rest your heart. Because it's in the conflict. That's where the message is. And I feel like that's so often the case with so many of our issues, that in the conflict, there is the message. So even if we have conflicting things in our lives, there's still messages in that. And there's a lot of hope that comes with that. As of right now, though, I can't help but see this fig tree as symbolizing two things that are dearest in my heart. One being the church and the other being my country. And I think that's because, for me, these two things are super conflicting. And I say that because it's so easy to want to leave and it's so easy to want to walk away from all the madness, all the chaos, all the, we could look at the bad, the negativity, all the evil. But then it's also like that saying from Hillel the Elder, where he's like, if not now, when? And if not you, who? I mean, we know that famous quote, right? So I feel like, yes, cut down the fig tree. But I also feel like, yes, dig up around it, put the manure, fertilize it, try your best with it. And that's just really difficult to want to do when these institutions, meaning the church and the government, and as regardless of whatever leadership we have, whatever political party, regardless of any of that, it's really difficult to want to still dig up around it and try with it when the institutions have done so much to warrant a cut down. But like I would have been telling my form trees over the last couple of days or so, I feel like to be part of a greater whole means to trust with faith and hope, and to continue trying and not just walk away. So it's like, keep trying while hoping for the best. So instead of walking away altogether and critiquing from far, it might be better to continue trying, to continue engaging, to continue grappling and wrestling, while being conscious of the real issues and the injustices taking place, and to work for change and reform. Like, it's so easy to be a critic. But like Brene Brown was saying, or I suppose Theodore Roosevelt, as the case might be, it's the people in the arena who count. Now, it's beyond me to tell anybody what to do with their lives. At the end of the day, when a person struggles with something, ultimately whatever decision they come to with the help of God, I think that should be honored and respected. And it's not up to me or anyone to determine when a person has discerned or discerned enough or discerned a good decision, right? Because again, going back to this distrust that we need to cut down, the distrust for one another that we need to do away with. But my thing is, maybe, just maybe, for every extra day that we do try, for every extra day that we continue to bring life to our day-to-day lives, when we continue to bring positivity, when we continue to bring creativity, when we continue to bring graciousness and goodness, then maybe somewhere down the road, those actions that we carry out would then be what the Holy Spirit needs in that moment for God to do God's work. So, if you ask me, I would say try. We should try for as long as we can. And once you do your best with God on your side, and then for sure it will be enough. Anyways, that's it from me this week. And as always, I appreciate you so much for watching. Thank you.